what makes video podcasting valuable.
We constantly say that people won't buy unless there's trust, but it's not 100% true, because one of the interesting other sides of that is people will buy if you're cheap enough. I was 25 minutes into the edit and I already had 6 clips. I was like,
I know.
There's so much content I can get out of this.
I feel like it's a difference between making something stretch and actually like getting to be picky and choosy. For audio only podcasts, they are also just missing out on so much distribution potential. The #1 podcasting app is. What are the things you do to grow your brand? Join me as we take a look at how the best in the business build authority and create true fans through video podcasting. I'm Josh Lewis, and this is Grow Your Podcast, produced by the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. Why do we care so much about video podcasting?
Well, I mean, the big one that I think the most people jive with, that we changed our vision statement from being kind of like what we do to now kind of the vision of no more faceless companies. Yep. We don't want faceless organizations anymore, because we're learning that younger generations are kind of rebelling against the idea of big corporate brands. Mm-hmm. They want to spend their money with people that they trust, that they know that they have a relationship with, or at least feel like they understand the person behind something. Yep. And so for us, video podcasting is such a key way to get people to understand who you are and as a person, not just as a brand. Yeah. And that is a huge difference from the marketing and advertising that we've seen in the world for years.
Right.
And even if you look at like things on Instagram, like where they have the best ad pages, or the LinkedIn's where they're always posting like the ad that they loved that changed how everyone viewed things. Like, they're interesting. They've done really cool things, and they hit that formula that our friend loves to talk about. You know, the attention plus emotion equals influence. Like they hit that formula. But they're not personal. Mm-hmm. They're not human. And you have to work really hard to do all those things to try and connect with somebody when it's not a human being.
Right.
But a human being you can connect with so easy.
Yeah.
So easy.
I keep thinking about, like, you know, when I used to work at a church, one of my main goals for being the director of communications was to like really show the faces of people in the congregation, of leadership, because like I know for myself, like when I almost remove the humanity of somebody or something, I lose trust. Mm-hmm. As soon as I like remember, oh, this is a person and here's their name and, you know, whatever. Like, I mean, not everybody's trustworthy. We get that. But for the people, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably trying to be trustworthy, I hope. But like,
we talked about that in the last episode, the ROI episode.
Exactly. And so when you show faces, when you show people, it just connects us in a way that nothing else does. I have friends who are really in the explainer video space, use animation to explain like really like complex topics and different things like that. And there's a massive place for that. Mm-hmm. The thing we're trying to emphasize really is the human connection. And if you really want to build a brand that's trustworthy, one of the biggest ways you can do that we believe, showing faces and kind of just getting out in front of people on camera consistently.
100%. I mean, I think there's something to that when certain brands use video, specifically like YouTube, like if they have YouTube channels that are focused on their brand, but the people inside the organization, is really so much more fun to interact with that company, because then you all of a sudden like, wait, I know you.
Yes.
Like a fun example of that, and this is a big national example, is back in the day, Devin Supertramp, the old YouTube channel.
Yep.
Like, which I guess he's still making videos I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
But it turned into a lot of fun parkour videos. But like He was the jam back in the day.
Yeah.
Like he was making viral videos every single other day, it felt like.
Right.
Well, some of his team started to make appearances in the videos that they were making. And then his team went out and built a brand called VidLead, which we now use.
Right.
And so
it's just crazy.
Yeah. And so I got on a sales call and all of a sudden I realized like, wait a minute, I saw you on YouTube 10 years ago.
You're the guy.
You're the guy.
Yes.
And like I was way more willing to trust them because I trusted that brand as being high quality, great at what they do.
Yep.
And then I just knew that, oh, these guys are the guys behind that brand. Like,
right.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. Showing I feel like one of my two favorite sort of things are video podcasts and BTS.
Yes.
Like so like I would actually argue like BTS is like a form of documentary. And
I was gonna say really behind the scenes style documentary stuff is so interesting.
It's the best.
Yeah.
And so it's because in both of those formats, you're able to see people. And so like I know like I've talked about Pro Church Tools ad nauseum, but like they have done such a great job through their BTS stuff. They've created a few more like almost like more highly produced vlogs recently, along with their like regular video podcast. And it's like, man, it's just like a match made in heaven.
Absolutely.
It's so perfect to show off their company. Because every time I had gotten on a call with these people, I'm like, I know who this person is.
I know you. Yes.
Yes.
Or I think I know you.
Yes.
At least.
Yes. I at least see you. So that's one less barrier that's in my way.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I like breaking down barriers. So it's great. So, okay. About what makes video podcasting valuable? So we did just talk a little bit about how it can humanize you.
Yeah.
People can connect with humans that way.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other, I have some ideas as well, but like, what are some things you've seen as we worked with people? Like what is the value video podcasting?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two or three kind of big buckets of what the value for video podcasting is. One of them, specifically for brands, is video podcasting is actually a really great sales tool. It is, I apologize, I got something in my eye. It's a really great it's a really great sales tool because you have the capability to invite prospects onto your show. At this point,
so it's like a biz dev thing.
It's like a biz dev thing. Yeah. And so like the interesting thing though, at this point is like, there was a time when people had lots of podcasts going on and people said, oh, I'm not going to go on a show unless they pay me to be on the show. That's right. That's kind of disappearing now because a lot of people are recognizing that like, if they go on to somebody else's show, it also turns into marketing content for themselves. So like say this is your show. So like, if we're talking about like, you bringing me on, I then get access to all this content that is talking about me,
right,
and my business and my brand, and that is a huge ROI for people because like you have the ability to not only have a conversation with this person for half an hour, however long your show is, then that just builds trust, really fast. And I know we talk about trust all the time. That's a huge piece,
but people don't buy from you unless they trust you.
Exactly.
Like, so that's why it's such a big deal. And it's like, we can, that's what business is about, building trust in a helpful, like not in a manipulative way. Some people try to, but like, that's not who we're trying to work with.
Yeah.
It's like, we try to work with people who like, they are trying to build trust because they actually care about their audience.
100%. But also, you just made me think about this. We constantly say that people won't buy unless there's trust, but it's not 100% true.
Sure.
Because one of the interesting other sides of that is people will buy if you're cheap enough.
It's true.
Because like that's the Temu model.
Yes. Well, and I'll give an example too. Like I just tried to get a pair of jeans and I was like, on Amazon or whatever, and I'm like, great, like this is cheaper. It looks like the style is great. Unfortunately, it's like a super cheap brand,
Mhm.
and so I you're right, but people will like if you want long term. Maybe we should say it this way: if you want long term customers or clients, if you
Yes.
want to build actual fans of your
Yes.
brand, like
Yes.
I will never like I return those. I will never buy those again.
Absolutely.
Um, I do this with services. I do, whatever
Yeah.
it is. And so if you want a long-term relationship,
Yes.
you can't skimp out on trust.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. But
But
I mean,
that's a good
trust is,
point.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Price being low enough is enough for people to try.
Sure.
Like you
Yes.
tried
Yep.
and you're like, looks good. Let me try it.
And it usually backfires on me.
Yes, usually
Yes.
does. But so while there is this whole market of like, let's be the cheapest to the market
Yeah.
and let people buy the inexpensive stuff, there is some proof that you need to have a higher quality product that is a more trustworthy brand
Right.
at the same time.
Right.
Now, obviously, that's a big part of video podcasting.
Yep.
The other big part of video podcasting that I don't think a lot of people think of because it takes so much effort
Mm.
is one video podcast creates mountains of marketing content
Yes.
for your business.
Yes.
Just like the way that we do it here in the studio, like a 45-minute episode can get you something like 8 shorts.
Yep.
So it can fill a whole month of marketing content, 2 episodes a week, like
Yep.
2 shorts a week.
Yep.
And you've got a whole month worth of content from one podcast recording. I mean, that nothing else quite works that way.
There's very few things that you can actually chop up in the way that you can do. Because like I think about some of these other marketing videos, like
Yeah.
they don't work well chopped up. Like
Yeah.
they just don't.
No.
But I mean like I've worked on several video projects where I tried to create a shorter version. Like I created this video highlighting this organization for a fundraiser dinner, right? But they also wanted a shorter version of it for social media. So it's like 3 minutes to 60 seconds. And it just didn't hit the same way.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to plan the big video for the short form
You
that you're going to be
have
doing
to.
at the same time if you want
Yes.
that to work. But most agencies don't actually do that very well.
No.
Like
no.
this addition of short form content is an addition.
Yes.
It's not the primary goal when you're creating video content.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the majority of video like content models that I've seen don't do shorts really well until you're spending 20, 30 grand
right.
a project.
Yep.
Because then they have the time and the budget resources to be able to pull off high quality short form content
Right.
in that. But with video podcasting, when you create this piece, you got interesting guests, interesting content, all being spoken about in this
Yes.
long format piece. It is so easy to grab. Like I had a podcast I was editing the other day. It was with a great guy, Carlos Sanchez. He owns a roofing company here in Cincinnati, and he and I talked for an hour. And I realized I was 25 minutes into the edit, and I already had 6 clips. I was like,
I know.
there's so much
Yes.
content I can get out of this.
Yes.
And so I actually had to start deleting things because I was
Right.
like, no, okay, this is too not as good as I want. This is way better. This is like more interesting. Like I had a surplus of content versus how do I make these small pieces fit into a 15, 30-second edit that still makes sense for the consumer and
Right.
gets the message across. And like, it just doesn't,
I
doesn't work.
I feel like it's a difference between making something stretch
Yeah.
and actually like getting to be picky and choosy, like
Yeah.
about what the best cream of the crop is.
100%.
Like, and yeah, because I feel the same way often when I'm editing is just like, man, there is thing after thing here that I could like, our typical thing, you get 7 or 8 shorts depending on your thing. And like I remember one time I had like 16 that I
Yeah.
could have pulled.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just like, It is insane, especially if you're talking with really great people or maybe somebody this is a sidebar that we'll get into in a later episode, but like having somebody well that can interview you so you're more of the subject matter
Yes,
expert.
that's a big deal.
Like if you can get the conversation mix correctly, like
Mhm.
there's just thing after thing after thing that you
Yeah.
can really use for your marketing. And it's
Well,
awesome.
and here's another thing too. Like, here's a bonus tip. Like, one of the things that can be hard is when you are doing podcasts, sometimes you wonder about what the content should be
Yeah.
of your episode.
Yep.
And when we're talking about creating a long format show and then building it into short form, if you're trying to think about, hey, what would be interesting for viral content ideas? There are two ways that you can find really interesting questions that you can ask. One of them is, you know how when you go to Google and you get those autocompletes as you're like starting to
Yes.
type into
Yep.
Google? Like if you start, like say you're a lawn care professional, like you can say, why is the grass? And then just see what questions pop up.
Totally. Right.
And those, every single one of those questions that are auto-filled are questions people are actively asking on Google.
Right.
So if you turn that into a question,
Yep.
you are already creating content that people want.
Yes.
Right there.
They're searching
For
it.
that answer.
Yes.
And so you could do that another way too. So there's a lot of other tools out there that exist. Google sells this backend data, so you can actually have a subscription to Google to be able to see their search data, what's being hit heavily. But there's other services that aggregate it too. There's one called SEMrush. SEMrush is kind of like an SEO tool, technically. But what it does is you can type in your industry, and what it'll do is it creates this big pie chart. And all the pie charts basically is all the questions and search topics that are around that topic.
Yep.
And so if you just look at that flywheel, you just read through that wheel and say, oh, that's an interesting question. Let's ask that question.
Right.
Oh, let's ask that question. And then if that question gets a great answer, trim it into a clip, and then you're instantly going to start getting recognized on if you make it hooky enough and you make it interesting enough.
Yes.
Obviously, that is a whole nother level to it.
Yes.
But if you can take that content, you're instantly giving something people already want.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And I think, there's a million ways that you can repurpose the content from a video podcast. You can use the transcript to like throw in a chat GPT and then create some email marketing around it.
100%.
You can, use it, take stills and create quotes, posts from it. Like there's just so much you can do.
Oh yeah, like LinkedIn.
Yes.
You can, one of the best things you can do to grow your network on LinkedIn is create a newsletter.
Right.
So if you create a newsletter that is just your podcast release, and then it's like your show notes so that can be written by AI or whatever, like that will rank you a lot higher on LinkedIn.
Yes.
People will notice your brand a whole lot more.
Yes.
And you can grow a lot faster. And it's repurposing the same content just to make a newsletter that let people know that your next episode is live.
Yes, exactly. And so I think the value of repurposing is your time, right? So part of the thing is we get that especially if you're listening to this episode, like you have limited time. You're busy, you're doing all these things. And so to have a sit down conversation for 30 minutes, for an hour, whatever it is, and then to be able to have all that content from that short time you were in studio, like, or in front of the camera, whatever. I mean, that's huge. You will not get that kind of, I would say, ROI on your time in hardly any other format or medium.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else that really works well like that. I think the only one that works any better is being a guest on someone else's show.
Sure.
Because then you don't have to do the work.
Exactly.
You just show up and talk.
You literally show
like,
up. It's awesome. Yes, yes.
But like for your own show, obviously there's some research, there's some planning, some invitation of guests, that sort of stuff. But like, no, I can't think of anything.
Yeah.
That's better.
It's great. And so one of the other things, and you started talking about this with coming up with conversation topics and questions, but another way that video podcasting is value is being able to just own the conversation in a certain space.
Yeah.
We've just seen that this is just true from whether you're talking businesses, marketing, or politics or whatever. If something is said enough by one person, like it starts to become the thing that is like, oh, okay, they're the voice in this.
Mhm.
They're the one who's like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm gonna like see what they say about this. And but you have to show up consistently. You have to show up regularly. What our vision is for our company, it's like no faceless companies, right? And so to try to like, I mean, we could talk about that from so many different
Oh,
angles.
yeah.
That's why we started a podcast. And
Yeah.
so to be able to like do that and be kind of the champions of this,
Mhm.
like that's something that's really important to us. And so I don't know.
Well, yeah,
Maybe
I think
the
that's interesting. The other thing that I was thinking about when it comes to that is, there are only a few mediums in the world that I think builds legacy. And I think
yes.
you can be an author who writes a book,
Yep.
and then that book can be timeless and people read it for a really long time. I
Yep.
mean, we're still reading the Iliad.
Yep.
It's thousands of years
Right.
old. I think it's thousands of years old, if I'm correct. It was a long time ago.
Yes.
So being an author is one. I think there is something to being someone involved in politics that is a pretty easy way to leave a legacy
Sure.
because history is often connected to politics,
Yep.
just in some
Yep.
form or way. But then right now, the only other way that I can think of outside of becoming like a famous person probably is podcasting,
Yeah.
because it is the ability to encompass the majority of your knowledge
Yeah.
in a format that is easily digestible by a lot of people.
Right.
So when you look at some of the biggest podcasters in the world, you recognize that like you actually grow connection with these people and with their legacy more than you had in other ways. Like the classic example right now is the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah.
One of the biggest podcasts in the world.
Yeah.
I would have never have known who Joe Rogan was because I never watch like MMA.
Yeah,
I never watch
sure.
MMA.
UFC,
I
yep.
wouldn't know any of that stuff.
Sure.
Like, but because he has a podcast where he talks to interesting people,
Yep.
I now learn about him, know about him, and he is seen as, in my head, just a really amazing connector who has skills to just connect with anybody.
Connect with anybody. He's one of the most curious people I've ever seen. And even people I know he disagrees with,
Yeah.
he treats them with respect and it's awesome. So
it's awesome.
Yes.
The same thing with the Smartless podcast.
Yep.
I knew of those guys from like Arrested Development and maybe Will and Grace, like, but I didn't know who they were. And I don't even know if I was like truly a fan of theirs until I got to know them as people on a podcast.
Yes.
That legacy that they left.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, yeah. I mean, obviously they're still here.
Yeah.
But like
they're leaving.
Yes. Like,
yes.
But the same thing, like we were talking with one of the local CEOs here, like just down the street from us. He's thinking about podcasting from the perspective of how do I'm looking at retirement in like 10 years. Yep. And what does it look like for me to leave a legacy of all this work that I've put my life into?
Yep.
And he said, well, I am writing a book, but I think I should do podcasting too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's another huge value to this video podcasting space is like, not only do they know your voice, they know your face.
Yep.
And you get this connection with people in a way that you just can't get with audio-only podcasts.
Yes, yes.
Audio-only podcasts are amazing. We love them. We listen to them all the time.
Yes.
But that ability to just have that connection to the face.
Yep.
Like the amount of radio DJs that I've heard for a long time, and then I see a picture, I'm like, that's not who I thought. That is not.
I am so there, man. Yeah. I've literally thought the same thing. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And you've just heard them for, anyway.
Yes.
And whoa, who are you?
Right.
Oh, you're that person. I recognize your voice.
Right.
Like, it's just a whole nother level to it. And
for audio only podcasts, they are also just missing out on so much distribution potential.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I was
or it's harder to distribute.
I was listening. So I was listening to a podcast today, and the number one podcasting app is YouTube.
Yeah.
So you're missing out on now what is the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've also heard Sean Cannell from Think Media. They help YouTubers and businesses and brands on YouTube. And his thing was legacy. He was like creating a YouTube channel. And so we're talking specifically like video podcasting because it's a lot easier
Yeah.
than doing a lot of different YouTube kind of videos. But he was like, this is like when I'm gone, like my kids will know what I think about X, Y, and Z. My people who I want to influence will know what I think about certain things. And
Yeah.
that's very important.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to own a conversation, if you're trying to get out what you thinking or convicted of
Yeah.
certain things, like that, this was Gary V. There's a podcast I was listening to with him, and he was talking about like, I don't try to convince anybody. I'm trying to like just communicate with conviction, and the people that like that conviction will rock with me, and the people that don't, they'll tune me out, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And so it's a great way of leaving a legacy, owning a conversation, and finding your audience.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah. Well, an interesting example for that one was I did YouTubing back in 2012, I
Right.
think 2010, 2011, 2012. And I don't know. I think on that check, I was pretty active on it for a while. I think that was back when the algorithm didn't exist to the extent it does now.
Yes.
So it was a lot more, how do you get yourself in front of people kind of stuff.
Yep.
But one of the interesting things I found was I got a couple 100,000 views, I think, over the time. I did it for about 3 years, something like that. The one thing that I found that was super interesting, I quit doing YouTube. I start my career at my church that I started working at. And the guy that they hired right after me was a video guy, super talented, crazy creative person. Like I look up to him in many ways because he's super skilled at video, just in a way that I never will be.
Yeah.
And he told me one of the first times that we met, he's like, dude, I found your YouTube content and it helped me figure out how to edit on Final Cut
hilarious.
before we had ever met.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, that blows my mind.
Right.
Like I had influence in a way that I had no clue. And now I look up to him because he's way better than I am at this stuff. But he was still in school at the time trying to figure out how to do something.
Yep.
And so he came across my tutorial, watched it, and learned how to do it. Like that sort of stuff blows my mind.
Yep.
And then the more you invest in video podcasting, the more you spend the time doing this, the more people that you won't even know the amount of change that you've had in their life just from the content you create.
Yes.
Because mine was a silly 10-minute tutorial on how to do slow motion really well in Final Cut.
Yeah.
And that's how my friend found out about me and learned and grew his skills.
Yeah.
Someone who does a podcast, who's been doing, say, an every other week podcast for 2 years.
Yep.
The amount of people you can influence and help
and get in front of
and grow
and
is incalculable.
Well, and I think that goes back to the time saving piece where it's like, one, you can create a lot of content by one sit down conversation, but the other piece is the distribution of things. Like if you're creating this content, like you don't have time to sit in front of tons of people, all your different clients. And depending on like where you're at in the organization, like that may not even be your role to actually sit down with each of these clients or whatever. And so to be able to be the voice in that conversation, but to get a lot of people watching or listening, like that's, I mean, we live in the era we do now. I don't think I have to like go too in depth on like how the internet works, but like it's so helpful to multiply yourself as that salesman, like you were talking about before.
Yeah.
And I think the one last thing I want to kind of hit on where it comes to the value of video podcasting. So I listen to Gary Vee a lot. I listen to Alex Hormozy, Layla Hormozy. I listen to Chris Do and like all these different people. The one thing especially that Gary Vee does really, really well is he's a unicorn with this. He can sit in the back of a taxi with his phone for like 5 minutes and give just gem after gem after gem of valuable content.
I think Hermosy's the same way.
Hormozy can totally do that. And they're two different kind of styles, but man, like they could totally do that. I mean, Layla Hormozy does this thing where she'll like be putting on her makeup in beginning of the day and just talking about something, but it's super valuable. So it's like there are these people that can do that.
Yes.
I know very few of them.
Yeah.
And what I love about video podcasting is it gives you the context to articulate value.
Mm-hmm.
So part of what makes something watchable is value. And so if your video isn't valuable, people aren't going to keep watching. They may click on a very helpful, like a clickbaity thumbnail, but they're not going to keep watching or they're not going to keep listening if you're not giving value. So I think I'm assuming if you're listening to this, like you can articulate things in a conversation. If you sat down, grabbed coffee with somebody, grabbed a beer with somebody, you would be able to really give them some valuable things with the conversation you're trying to own, whatever. Doing that on your phone in the back of a taxi cab like that may not, or an Uber or whatever, that would not be you. But in this setting, right, something like this, you could totally do it. And we've heard this from just about every single person that walks in here. I'm specifically thinking about the people that are on your show, but we've heard some others. Shout out Cincinnati Business Podcast. But like they're always like, wow, that time went by so fast. Absolutely. Or like, I just felt so comfortable.
Yeah.
And you were able to get value out of people because we're just sitting down and talking.
And I think another point to that too is I think the majority of the valuable clips we pull from a podcast doesn't happen until the second half of the show.
I would agree with that.
The majority of people need time to warm up, have a conversation. And that's hard. That's hard for the audience member sometimes when they're sitting there, like sitting through 20 minutes before all the gold starts coming out, which is something that you just get with time.
Yep.
But especially people who are newer to the podcasting space, the best content shows up once they're comfortable.
Yes.
Having this conversation.
Yep.
And so while we still find good stuff at the front, and you want to front load as much as you can in a podcast, the value often comes near the end.
Yes.
When you're in these moments of comfort, the cameras have disappeared, the microphones have disappeared, and it's just a conversation between the two people.
Yes, I agree.
So I think that's just an important thing to note is like for some of us who are not the Gary V's, who are not the Alex Hormozys, even though we have things to say, sometimes we need the comfort and the conversation to be able to have that.
100%.
And so if we can have that time to just fall into it, gradually hit your space, hit your stride, and go, then you'll actually be able to give valuable content. And I think you'll grow a really incredible audience.
I have essentially two questions then for you. With this idea of no more faceless companies, how can you become the face of a conversation? Again, we think video podcasting is one of the best ways to do that, but I think it's an important thing for you to think through. How do you become not just a logo, not just a big building? How do you become a face that people can connect to and start to trust and become a fan of? The other piece is like, while we love video podcasting, and we think that's, like we just said, that's the place to articulate value. With whatever medium you choose, how can you give value to the audience? Not just what can you talk about for days, but because like we've talked about, we could talk about all the ins and outs of video gear and how to post and all these things. You don't care about that. You want to be successful, but you don't have time for that. And so how can, in terms of your content, what can you give value? Like, we're not going to talk about certain niche things about video production on this podcast. We're going to talk about what you can do as somebody who is trying to create content, trying to be the face of your company, trying to give value. So how are you giving value to your specific audience in the way that only you can? So anyways, thank you so much for your time, attention, and trust, and we will talk to you next time. Hey, if you're getting any value out of this conversation, would you please like, subscribe, rate, review, share this video, do all the things, and get the word out about this podcast. We are really trying to help podcasters like you, brand builders like you, use video podcasts in the best way possible. Thank you so much for your time, attention, and trust, and we will see you next time.